Have you ever thought about leaving your day job to pursue your passion? What are you willing to do to create the life you love through music? That's what we're going to be looking at in this episode of the New Music Industry Podcast.
You're listening to the New Music Industry with David Andrew Weeb.
Today I'm chatting with Fierce Deity's Jonathon Barwick. How are you today, Jonathon?
Good, David. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining me today. So we got connected through a mutual contact and friend of ours, Monica Strutt, and she works pretty heavily with heavy bands.
Yeah, she does. Yeah, I worked with her on my last single, A Ballad of Heartbreak and Despair, and the results spoke for themselves. She's doing a wonderful thing. She's filling a gap that needs to be filled, like knowledge-wise, for people like me.
Agreed. I kind of thought it was brilliant when I saw it because I was like, I love hard rock. Metal's not my thing quite as much. I like some metal. But if I had, it's the foresight to see that as an opportunity, perhaps I would have gone down that road too. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with the more generalized approach that I have. I know that people get a lot of value out of it. And I am serving a much smaller niche of music entrepreneurship, but I kind of have my own definition of that, and I think the right people resonate with it and the wrong people turn away because
that's the people who are not have. You can't you don't want like there's a real attitude. Well, there was when you're getting into music, of course you want to have squillions and squillions of loyal followers and whatnot, but I think these days there's more precedence being like put on true genuine fans.
Exactly. And I think the wrong people aren't willing to invest in themselves. And I can't imagine my stuff is for anyone that isn't willing. I'm not saying that my products cost thousands of dollars. I don't have anything in that range yet. I'm developing that. But at the same time, if you can't be bothered to buy a $39 course, I kind of wonder where your financial life is at and where your head is at. In terms of building your music
that
career.
Was me. I used to be that kid that would look at a $40. No, I'm going to go and spend that on beer and silly things. So
totally,
it weeds out. Yeah, it weeds out the hopeless ones, I think.
Which brings us to an interesting question: like, what changed for you that you began being willing to invest in yourself?
I think it was Confucius that said, "Man has two lives, and the second one begins when he remembers he only has one." So when I got at about 27, a relationship ended. That I honestly didn't think would ever end. It was this whole, this massive heartbreak, and it brought about all this existential dread of oh, wow, I'm 27. I've been grinding in the local scene for over 10 years now. And we there was some scatterings of good luck. We played some big shows, but we really didn't know what we were doing. We were kind of making it up as we go along. We were pretty unprofessional in how we did deal with certain, management types and whatnot. So I got to the point where I was like, I knew it was what I wanted to do my whole life since I saw the Beatles like Hard Day's Night when I was 5 years old. I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I picked up a guitar, something happened, the chorus of Angels. There's a big volume swell, and I was like, oh, this is my thing. So when I got to 27, I knew we were doing a lot wrong, but I didn't know how bands got out of that local, that rung, get up that next rung. So I sort of just snapped awake and wanted to push forward. So that's what did it. A good old fashioned heartbreak.
Yeah, it's really the painful experiences that lead to awakening. These days you can't really use the term woke without describing a very specific part of the population that I don't totally agree with, but that's kind of another story for another time.
It is.
But I'm here. Yeah, but I'm with you. I think when I was 25, that was when I had my first major heartbreak, and that had only lasted 3 months, but it prompted me to write songs endlessly for a couple months. And then
the creativity that comes from it is amazing. I cracked open. It was what I used to in my old band. I think we in 15 years, not because we were slow, I was always writing songs and whatnot, but because of the recording process and studios weren't that available, even the technology's come a long way even in that time. It would take me a long time to get to the point where I'd have another album ready to go. But the Heartbreak came in just as we were about to tour our last album, and by the end of that like little short run, because we toured Australia, we never got a rung, we never got that foothold up into the next territory. So in a matter of like weeks, I had like the next album ready to go. And so I was like, boys, let's get hard, like let's go hard, and I've got these songs that are ready to go. Let's keep going. And that tour didn't do too well, and there was like money issues and priorities started to shift, and like, yeah, so it all sort of cracked apart and made way for Deity.
Which is really cool, yeah, and it's great how those experiences can inspire a lot of great music. People often say something good comes out of everything bad, and that can absolutely be the truth when you're an artist and you're able to turn those feelings into art. Like my second major breakup was a little more recent, and that was because the relationship just wouldn't move beyond a certain level. It lasted a couple of years, but like for whatever reason, we just couldn't get past certain things. And that's when it was like, I guess, we might be friends and we might be able to hang out, but beyond that, it's just not going to go anywhere,
Yeah. It's like all human relationships really boil down to like that. They have like a time and a place. And I believe like everyone comes in, serves a role in your life to teach you something. Sometimes it's painful, but sometimes you like lifelong friends and whatnot. But yeah, a lot of the time you've got to like be honest with yourself, and going solo and doing this thing, that was me being honest with myself. This was honestly what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in charge of everything. So if it fails because it wasn't meant to be, not because of anything else.
That's a really great perspective. And that alone is a nice little soundbite that's worth listening to. But rewinding a little bit, you said you began gigging at the age of 15, and you played some major supporting slots for Nightwish and Motorhead and Blind Guardian and Hammerfall. We kind of know where that went, but how was it that you couldn't find a way to capitalize on those opportunities?
Well, there's many. It's so nuanced. The reason that band fell apart is so nuanced, and like I definitely had a hand in it. Like I definitely became difficult to work with because I wanted to do something, and this was my life. Like I was in that band long before I met those boys. Like I had been in that band my whole life, essentially thinking I was going to put one band together and be like the Rolling Stones of metal, be together forever and always do it. And the drummer would take care of a lot of the PR because he was the kid that had the computer. So he would answer the emails, and that sort of just how the setup went. And so we would find ourselves in these situations. It was kind of always a bad timing as well. Like we never had an album or anything coming out when these big bands would come down. Like we didn't have anyone telling us, it's like, hey, this is when the gigging season is. Did you know that, Loud Park happens in Japan around this time? So Australia gets a lot of tours off that. Like we didn't have anyone just sort of fine tuning it. We were just a little bit like still in that mentality of like, if we're getting gigs, that's good. If we're partying and it's fun, then what's there to complain about? But it was like I loved doing those big shows, I write big music. My music doesn't really make sense in these like small pub situations. So when we got to these big stages, I was like, the music would fit, and of course everyone would be like, "Oh wow, you guys really seemed at home up there." And that, like, I was just always, of course, that's where we're supposed to be. Like that's where I want to be. There's very few times in my life and places in my life where I felt that I'm exactly where I need to be. And when we did those big stages, it was, those were some of those rare times. And of course, you get the big social media influx when you're doing the big thing, and then we'd fail to capitalize. So, a month later we were just, stale and dead in the water again. And, when the breakup, when it started to fall apart, I realized that didn't fuss the other boys. Like they were just kind of hobbyists, and I was the only one that was worried about these things. So that's, that's when all the passive aggressiveness, especially on my behalf, came through. And I started to realize that there's certain things you have to do. There's like you sort of have to, brand yourself. You have to, especially on social media, you have to, portray yourself in such a way and not get involved in certain things unless that's, your thing. And yeah, that was going to be very hard with 3 other dudes in the band. And again, I just wanted to get my music away because I knew my music was good. I've always known what good music sounds like. I've only just recently sort of learned how to make it and how to present it. So that's how that went. We just never got that wrong because we weren't being told how to do it, really. We weren't getting told, hey, don't do this, do this. And we sort of it just really went out with a whimper, which is wild because we were such a wild young band and we had, a good following. People were passionate about it. And then, it sort of like whimpered out and died.
I mean, that's where you and I connect in a big way because none of my bands really lasted longer than a year and a half. And I was in one band called Angels Breaking Silence. It was a pretty good gig because we started booking camps and skate parks and things like that, kind of venues that were a little more accessible to like all age shows. And
interesting. A little left to center as well. Little thinking a little differently. Yeah.
Just a little unconventional. And it really worked for us because like booking those types of gigs without really a connection to high school and colleges is near impossible. And it just so happened that our singer was in high school at the time. And the band had a lot of potential. We didn't have a unique sound. Our sound wasn't tight just yet. We all played pretty well, our own instruments and our own parts. We just didn't quite have the uniqueness yet. But that's something that's not always honed in like a year and a half.
No, you got to go on that journey.
Exactly. So I saw so much potential in it. And that's kind of where, two of the guys ended up marrying, so I could kind of tell exactly where their priorities were. And the high school kid sort of ended up resenting me. I think out of any of us, he's the only one that still does music in some capacity, and I think he became a rapper or some such. But I don't.
He did go on the journey. He discovered himself. Good for him.
He went on his own journey, and I just kind of continued on making music in a capacity that was fun for me and made sense for me. And I played in a bunch of bands and did the hired gun thing and session playing and all that, and which has all been really great. The other interesting part, I guess, is just like I invested in a company, music industry startup about 2012. And so kind of the parallel there is just that if that had worked out, I might be a millionaire by now.
And you've got to do those things in life. Like it's what it's here for. Like every breath is a miracle. People forget that.
Yes.
You got to take a couple of risks here and there. You got to spend $39 on a course and see what happens.
Totally. And then it led me to where I am today. And I work hard and I enjoy my work and I'm passionate about it. And that's the only way to improve is to just be committed to it and to be dedicated to it. So
there's a popular misconception that like I recently left my job. And so the conception was that I wanted to like bum around and not be told what to do. And like, I was like, no, like I'm going to work. Like I wake up at like 6 a.m., go to bed at like 10 p.m. and like I stream at least 3 hours a day on Twitch and go and hang out with the people there. And then the rest of it, I'm, working, like either sending emails to people like yourself or I'm like in the studio deliberating over whether I need like a bit more of a brassy synth sound on this bit or a little bit more of a stringsy synth sound. Like I love it. This is what I wanted to do. I wanted to wake up and work hard at something that means something to me.
I think that's ideal. And I want to congratulate you on doing a good job in your emails. There's plenty that never get past the door or
there's an advertisement for Monica there. She honed my reaching out skills.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think Michael Port, book yourself solid, he calls it the red rope policy. You got to have one because everybody's going to treat you like their personal assistant, especially in these days of instant connection through social media.
Yeah.
Like my time is my time and you don't have to respect that. I have to. And that's where it's going to be. It's not even a matter of boundaries for some people, which is why you just like, well, I'm going to do it when I'm going to do it. And if you're not going to let me do it when I'm going to do it, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
Like I'm a Sigma male through and through. And if you don't know what that is, you can totally look it up on YouTube or whatever.
Later. Yeah.
Yeah. But like That's very characteristic of a Sigma male. We don't work with people,
Right.
or bosses at the very least. You know.
Yeah, maybe I'm not. I think I'm just too much of a hippie. Like I can't like I tried so hard. Like I worked for like 10 years, like all through my 20s in jobs, various day jobs that were always non-committal. So I could, for when the band broke, which was definitely going to happen, we were definitely going to get a break and take off. I could just shed the career and go. But I always felt so fake and imposterish because I just really deep down didn't care. Because it was just like, well, like we're not working to any like higher kind of thing. And I know it's not that much of a higher goal to just want to release some cool albums. But, for me, it is. By my own metric, I have my own sense of like what is valuable and, what I'll deem a life well spent is. Like this is my own. Anyone listening that's thinking about quitting their job to like make music, like you probably shouldn't do it. Like I'm not at the successful point yet. Like I'm at the wake up and work hard and hope, David writes back to my email stage. It's very exciting and I'm full of fear and excitement, which I can only describe as being alive. Like I feel alive, but yeah, it might not be a good idea. Who knows? We'll see.
You know what? I think it's for some people and not for others. And I think it comes down to how emotionally intelligent are you, which kind of sounds buzzwordy, but like how in tune are you with your heart? What's going to make you happy? Are you in tune with that? Because following that, you get big ideas. You get scary ideas. But just thinking logically and trying to figure it all out in your head, you actually ended up going smaller and then just never go for the things that you're going to make you happy. Like there's one working relationship I have that I'm evaluating very closely this year. It pays the bulk of my income and helps me live. But like, as far as doing it and being happy, I find that very challenging because it's kind of the same thing day in, day out. At least I get to do it on my time and my terms for the most part. But those are the kinds of things you want to closely evaluate and figure out what it is where your joy and your happiness is taking you.
Indeed. It took me 28 years to realize that there's other currencies in life other than money, and money's not even the most valuable one.
So true. One thing I wanted to go back and ask was just how, like, you got started pretty early. For some people, that's going to be like a fluid thing, like almost like, okay, I started here and ended up here, and it just feels like a portion of the journey. But like for some people, there's so much that happened in between that dash, right? So did your perspective change from being 15 to where you are now?
Oh, definitely. Like the idea of success is completely, I'm going to use the term realistic now. Like it's, I'm not sure exactly when it happened, but when I was a kid, I wanted to be, AC/DC or Aerosmith, like that top impossible god tier that, once you learn anything about the music industry, you realize that's actually impossible to achieve. Like that's over a span of like 4 generations, and the music industry was different. And now the record labels are keeping these bands up in that untouchable thing so they can still sell their back catalog in 2021. Like it's this unachievable thing. The record companies will never allow any bands to get that big anymore because they don't need to. So when you're a kid coming through, you want to be that. You think that is the success, but I don't know. I got into this band Elder in the last couple of years, and they're not, they're not Aerosmith, they're not massive, but they're at the point where they can, tour countries and people show up to their shows, and they've got it's a small, by the standards of like social media, they've got quite a small following, but they put out great records that they get to do. That's like, to me, that's successful. They put out a record and a bunch of people care about it. That, and again, going back to our point earlier about not wanting to collect a whole mass of fans, but just sort of like do what you want to do and find your niche audience. Like that's my idea of success now. So my perspective went from, hey guys, like to the band where I feel like we've got something special. Life is very short and I'd like to do something special with it. And it's like, we're probably not going to be successful, but like, do you want to just do some things anyway?
Yeah.
that's kind of where my head's at. It's like just kind of it's a real see what happens kind of thing. It's like, okay, well, I'll go solo, see what happens. Oh wow, this song came up really good, and then that was the first step. Oh, people are reacting to this. Like the compliments I get now are different. It used to be like, oh man, your music's like so fun, and it was a good live show. But I came out with these first 5 songs that Deity's done, these singles. These are the songs that I was speaking about earlier that came out of this heartbreak and this real morose sadness. And people are getting in touch now. I've been like, man, like that song really hit me. So to me, that was like this guiding, stepping stone of like, oh, okay, I'm on the right path now. This is because I wanted to, like, I like emotional music, and to connect with people like that and give them elicit an emotional response like my favorite artists have done for me. That's kind of what I want to do. That's kind of my idea of success now. So yeah, my perspective of success dramatically changed. There was a point in the intro you're talking about how you don't necessarily deal with a lot of metal bands. There's like a very good reason for that, is because a lot of metal bands aren't very good. And
that's totally fair.
And why they're not very good is because they don't understand that the best metal bands write songs and all the bad metal bands write metal songs. So they're trying to they don't understand. Like you take a great metal song, play it in any other style or genre, and it works. But there's metal bands out there that don't understand that you're not supposed to be writing metal songs. You're supposed to be writing songs.
Yeah, that brought me back to my band, which at the time, post-hardcore was kind of the thing. So
I remember it, yeah.
Yeah, it was still a matter of whether you wrote songs or you wrote breakdowns.
It was a fun time, I remember, because we were a classic metal band, right? But there was nothing else out there like it. So we ended up playing with a lot of these core bands, and you could watch them and just be like, well, here it comes. Da-da-da.
Exactly.
You could read it. Yeah, you could feel it coming.
Yeah, that was pretty hilarious. And you also reminded me of a conversation I had with my naturopath, who was almost like a mentor figure. It's kind of crazy, but he was saying, pre-subprime mortgage lending disaster of 2008, 9-ish.
Yeah.
A lot of people would come to him and say, oh yeah, I'll absolutely take care of my health, but I'm going to make all my money now because things were really good then, especially in Calgary where I used to live. I'm going to make all my money. I'm going to retire in 5 years. They would keep telling him that. But then, of course, the meltdown happened, and then it got put off another 5 years, and then another 10 years, and then they would never take care of their health. And so it can be with your passion, right? You could start today, or you could start 5 years down the line, and then 10 years down the line, and then 15 years down the line.
Yes.
By the time where you're going like, I don't even know if I have the willpower or determination or vision to do it anymore.
Yes, exactly. And like it's weird. Like that time will pass regardless. It's like doing a uni course.
Yes.
You look at it and be like, oh, I'm 28 years old and there's like a 6-year uni course to do the thing I want to do. But like, man, like, dude, that's 6 years. It's a long time. Go and not do it. And then next thing you know, you're 34 and you haven't done the thing.
Totally.
The time passes regardless.
And the school system and mainstream music kind of have a lot in common philosophically. Overall, because I think there's certain ideas that the music industry wants to make sure they're pushing. It's always kind of subversive, and it's always kind of like a good old boys club sort of thing. I'm not trying to speak ill of the music industry. Obviously, I love it. I wouldn't be in it if I didn't think well of it. But yeah, there's such parallels between education and music industry when you really look at them closely. But
I wish, for the sake of like myself as a young person listening to this, like really it is like the education system, like the ones that work the hardest are the ones you've heard about. Like, and again, the music industry likes to portray this fun, like it's, you'll play festivals and like, there'll be, you'll get wheeled into a hotel room full of groupies covered in whipped cream. But really, like, if that's what you're in it for, like, go and do that anyway. You don't have to be in the music industry to do that. Just go do it. But you really should find something you're actually passionate, like something you want to work 12 hours a day at least.
Yeah.
Like with the education system, don't be a doctor because your parents, if you want to be an anthropologist, like go do that. That's what I find the parallels between the education, picking a life path. The music, like for me, like I've just been blessed to have enough life experience and trauma and joy in my life to, make this leap. So you go, find what you want to do. Definitely.
Well, that is absolutely something I wrote about in my yet unpublished 2.0 version of the new music industry. And I basically said there's sex, drugs, and rock and roll. The only thing that you can't do without rock and roll is rock and roll. So begin looking at them separately, because if sex is what you want, there's easier ways to get there. And if drugs are what you want, well, you might be dealing with other issues.
Yeah. Yeah, stay away from that stuff. Like, it's too good. That's the thing. It's too good. It'll make you not want to work. You start finding your joy in finding that perfect riser, or that perfect kick groove to make that riff really settle in. Like that's where you got to find your joys. Maybe that's just me being 31 now compared to 21. I'm sure the 21-year-old self would just like want to fight me now. I think you just want to bash me.
Right. Well, my coach always said the same thing, that, hanging around pot smokers would make you ultimately unproductive. But I want to talk a little bit about Fierce Deity. I don't know what kind of interviewer I would be if I didn't ask. It sounds like it's a relatively new project, but, speak openly about it. What is it?
Fierce Deity, I call it stoner power metal, because to me that's where I find my sound in there. Like there's a sound in my head that I'm just chasing. It's like this is my dragon to chase in life. But I had the idea. I always loved the name. It's a Zelda reference, actually, Majora's Mask.
Ah,
yeah,
of course.
Shout out to any Zelda fans listening. That deserves your follow. So I always liked that name, and really it got into in 2008. 2017 is when the massive heartbreak and my whole existential crisis began. By 2018, I sobered up. Like I was sober for 2.5 years, and when I say sober, I didn't touch alcohol. I was still like smoking weed, and like I microdosed LSD for a little bit, which is it's a pretty big part of the Deity story. It's kind of what got the idea over the line, because you microdose LSD, you get more blood flow to the brain, you get off what's called your default neural pathway and start thinking of things differently. So next thing I know, I'm microdosing LSD. I'm decided to travel. I went to Japan, spent a couple of weeks there. I spent a couple of weeks in Canada, and Canada's nice, but honestly, Japan set the bar way too high as far as an experience goes. It's just beautiful, and I had so many revelations there, simple things, simple little things about my life. So when I got home, I hadn't Deity had always been in the back of my mind, but I think the seed was definitely planted in Japan. I was in Tokyo, and I was walking around. I was near Edo Castle. I was near the middle there. And I saw a sign that said Tokyo Budokan, 1 kilometer this way. And that was profound for me, because I'd always wanted to play the Budokan. Because the Beatles did the Budokan, Ozzy Osbourne, the Budokan, all of these great gigs at Judas Priest, the Budokans were the place to play in Japan. For me, that was this mountain that I wanted to climb. And I chuckled to myself, because I knew by then that the band I was in weren't doing what it takes to have that kind of success. So I was like, this is probably the closest I'll ever get to playing the Budokan. So I took a little photo of the sign. I laughed to myself, and I was like, well, kids, it's funny and sad. And I kept walking, paid no attention to the sign, I was walking around for a while. I did some laps, took some turns, just exploring the place I was in. And I came across another sign that said Tokyo Budokan, 400 meters. And I was like, I laughed to myself, because I was like, hey, maybe I'm closer than I think. You never know, This is happening geographically, but maybe, higher up in the scheme of life, maybe I'm a little bit closer to a great life than I think. So I ended up going to visit the Budokan, and I think it was 2 p.m. in the afternoon. I'm not sure who was playing a show there. It was just some nondescript Japanese boy band And of course, like, I don't read Japanese, so I can't tell you their name. Can't just, they looked Japanese. They looked like a Japanese boy band, well dressed. And there was like a massive queue. And I was like, whoa, like, who is this band to, like, there's a whole bunch of people here lining up at 2 p.m. for their show. And I sort of like all of this just sort of hit me, and I just sort of overwhelmed with this emotion of like, this is entirely possible. And it's silly, but you don't have to be Judas Priest, Ozzy Osbourne, or the Beatles to play the Budokan. You have to be in the game. Like, you have to be a band. You have to be, you have to send the emails. You have to do all these things. So I had this massive like revelation of it's never too late to start, and you should, keep silly little dreams alive, because I just wouldn't be myself if I didn't have something silly to work towards.
God, yeah.
So, I whipped out my phone, and I've kept this I just make notes of thoughts. And I just made a note of that moment, because I realized that I will never play the Budokan, but a small part of me wants to be wrong. So I wrote it down. So if I have that moment when I'm backstage at the Budokan, they say 5 minutes till you're on, I can remember standing outside it in 2018 going, it will never happen. So that's what Deity is. It's me chasing something a bit silly, because that's who I am. Like, I can't wake up and go and enter invoices. Like, I just can't do it. I would become an alcoholic. Like, I would just I would just deteriorate if I wasn't waking up to try and find the right synth part. It's just who I am. So a Deity is me. It allows me to be myself. Yeah. And not in the sense of like waking up and spending the day how I want to spend it. And hopefully I can make myself valuable enough and have find my niche to the point where I can make an album, sell enough albums to, survive and make the next album. That's what Deity is. It's just a vessel for me to spend my life how I want to spend it, doing silly things.
Well, and hopefully we can help you get there. But I think you expressed it very well, that like, because you're doing this, you don't mind getting up at 6 and going to sleep at 10, which is like the ideal. Like, that's the ideal everyone should strive for.
That's success. Wanting to get out of bed, that's success. Yeah.
But if you were working in some soul-crushing job, you'd be hitting the snooze at 8:45, and you got 10 minutes to get to work, and
you work out the exact minute you can wake up and still get presentable and be to work on time. It's I've seen people go down. Like, I've got. My parents, they were safe in life and they deteriorated. I've got like older male friends that were so like full of, when I told them I was going to quit my job, you can see it in their eyes. They're like, oh, I'm so happy for you. Like, I've seen what happens to people that don't take risks.
Yep. No,
it's
that's
almost
absolutely
to the point where you're better off. Like, survival is not just about food, shelter, and water. You've got to, like, it's a brutal term, but like it's kind of an in-joke with a bunch of my friends. Like, you've got to keep the shotgun out of your own mouth. Like, don't worry about, you become the biggest threat to your own survival eventually if you don't listen to yourself.
Definitely. I mean, I had a recent tweet. I think I just did this drop last night. I do a lot of tweet drops just in case anybody wants to know.
Right.
At David A. Weave. Either I think I'm a genius or I just, drop things as they occur to me. But I think in essence, I said, you can work at something that makes you happy. You can work at something for the money, and you can work for something that's a means to an end, which is usually for the money. But you can't put a price tag on things that make you happy. Everything else you can easily put a price tag on. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, it's strange because there's no, like, yesterday I had some pretty massive breakthroughs, just found the right sounds for, like, I had a really good day in the studio, and nice. Then like I came out of the studio and I was like, I could feel myself wanting to like celebrate, but it's like when you're working a job for so long, like 5:30 becomes the goal. And once you hit 5:30, that's like your reward. You get to go home. It's kind of strange. Like, you've got to find happiness doing the process, because there kind of is no, the fireworks never go off. Like once you've released the album, people go, oh yeah, great, thanks. And then you're on to the next thing. So yeah, it's a funny thing. And I think you're exactly right. You've got to find something that you just love the process of, and you really don't care if it fails.
Yeah, it's easy to forget, but I think you kind of reach a certain age and then you realize that everything's going to be a moment. So you can be excited or happy about something for a whole 10 minutes or 20 minutes or maybe a little longer, but it's still just going to be a moment. And so therefore there's no finish line. It's just human to continue on that path and pursue. The only thing I would suggest is people should absolutely stop and celebrate when that occasion arises. Recognize yourself and acknowledge yourself for what you've done. Honestly, celebration just seems to lead to more celebration. If you have none of that in your life, then you're, who knows?
Maybe
you won't call it forward.
I like that, because I've kind of been a bit tentative to celebrate, just because, I saved up a bunch of money for the last 12 months of working the day job to give myself this window. So no, maybe I will go out and get some sushi when I've had a good day.
Do it. Absolutely. And I'd imagine there's some decent sushi to be had in Australia. So that's great.
Yeah, it's pretty good here. Some good, the chain is called Bento.
Oh yeah.
There's a good chain down here called Bento. And if you find the right one with, the staff and the chefs and whatnot that do it with a lot of love, then yeah, you can get some really good Japanese food. Absolutely.
And I'm allowing myself to go down all these trails, but kind of circling back to Japan, I guess for anyone who hasn't been, there's actually no description that will suffice. But what I will say is it's a beautiful culture. There's beautiful people. There's amazing food and amazing sights,
And if you are from a Western culture, you'll go there and think to yourselves like, we've got a lot to learn. We've got a lot to learn about how to treat each other. Yeah. There's a lot we're doing wrong. There's some basic manners.
Exactly. That's absolutely spot on. And I like that you're a world traveler too. I was setting myself up to be a digital nomad, and I got around a little bit before COVID hit, but then COVID hit. And we are where we are with that. But
yeah, I'd love to do it more again. It's another reason why I took a leap of faith. Like I love the idea of having some sort of life where I could be like, hey, you know what? Like, I'm going to move to Japan for a year.
Yeah.
Or like, I'm going to go and live in Germany for a year and just absorb that. Because again, like when you're living life as if every day you wake up and every breath is a miracle. Like when you think about it, a breath is a scientific miracle. The ability to wake up and breathe. And to be born, like I've done a lot of meditation, and like one of my favorite meditations is to sit and think about every single little thing that has had to have happened for you to exist. And that's wild when you spend 20 minutes going back. Like you realize, wow, I probably shouldn't be waking up and working in an office. Like maybe I should, spend more time just wrestling the dog. These are the small moments of joy. So
agreed. Absolutely. Meditation definitely has you honing in on that. And when you go through health crises, that can also make you aware that, wow, I'm still alive. I'm still here. And that's such a miracle.
Yeah. Try and do something remarkable with your life. But I don't know, I guess it's just not for everyone. There are people that love that day job, or like their career takes them through a day job and whatnot. And they do it, and they love the simple things in life, so that's what they want to do. So, yeah, as long as you're waking up doing what you want to do, like truly want to do, listener, if you can hear my voice, if you're doing what you truly want to do, that is good. But if you're not, start making some plans, start digging some tunnels.
Absolutely. And that's a good way of saying too that, there's something for everyone. Maybe taking big risks is not your thing, and maybe playing golf on the weekends is, and that's fine. There's actually nothing wrong with that, but there is absolutely something for everyone.
There is. Yeah. Like I don't know what it is about my brain, but I just can't do those things. So I'm imagining that there's people out there with, the brains and minds and the wills that can. And
exactly.
Yeah. Good for them. but I guess like I'd love to help people get out of, that quiet desperation. That's the state I was in, this quiet desperation. Yeah. So if I could offer any advice, it would be to, save a percentage of your pay each week, put it away, figure out how much you need per week to live. Like I did the math and actually realized I was earning like twice as much money as what I needed. So as soon as I realized that, I could save it and realize that I actually don't need that much money to live. So you've got to be realistic about things, because you can't just fill your backpack with things and like run away and get on a train and run away from home. You've got to be realistic with your risks.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And in the Google Doc, we kind of prepared this beforehand, but you mentioned that you feel like you finally arrived at the starting line of your life in music.
Yeah, I've crawled my way to the beginning of my career, I think.
And so just for our younger viewers, I'm not saying you're old. I'm not old, and I'm older than you.
You said younger.
but for the younger listeners, how does it feel to be in your early 30s now, having arrived at the starting point in life?
Earlier, I said there are very few points in my life where I felt like I am supposed to be. I am where I'm supposed to be. Sorry, and that's really what it feels like. And there's this wonderful, wonderful voice that when I wake up and like I think about, like I still have this tiny urge to just get, stoned and drunk all day and play video games and or like, watch old movies and waste my time. But there's like, since quitting the day job, I can't do that anymore. And that is so valuable. That is like, no, man, you have to go and send that email to David Weep and ask if you can be on his podcast. Like you need to sit and finish this album now, because you've got patrons now. Like I got a Patreon and like there's an expectation on myself. Like I feel like I've legitimized myself by quitting my job and to do this, to be this songwriter, this producer. I feel like I refer to myself as the Kanye West of heavy metal. There's one-man producer that like I feel like I've legitimized and solidified that character. So I have to and want to live up to that. So I feel legitimate. I feel full of fear and excitement. And again, it's just a blend. It's a concoction of feelings that I can only describe as alive. I feel alive.
That's awesome. And,
gives me chills.
Yeah. Your passion absolutely comes across. It actually astounds me that I keep putting myself out there in different ways. Not every week on the podcast, not every week on the blog, but every once in a while I'll put that drop out there and say, go and contact 10 people today and make them one of me, or one of those people me. And people don't do it, and it's clear that they don't do it because I don't get the email. And
it's probably because they've got $800 turning up on payday. So they don't have to try, because that money's going to turn up and they'll be safe for another week. Once you take that away, that's when the brain really starts to work.
That's true. Well, like I'm sometimes confounded by that, just because I look at the opportunities and it's just my mind is blown. But to have that paradigm or that perspective, you would have had to go through the same things I do. Like I just look at the opportunity that Twitter represents, and I follow people that are inspiring and are dropping amazing info. And it makes me go, wow, I have access to this. I have access to these people. Some of those people have literally been on my podcast. I've had the opportunity to chat with them before. I've even created a bit of a friendship or connection with some of them. And that's the opportunity that's available. And without that, people's words don't match up with their actions is kind of what we're getting at there, I think.
Yeah, the opportunities do come if you make yourself available to them.
Yes, definitely. And you also mentioned in the Google Doc, you feel like you have something truly creative to offer the metal music industry. That's awesome. We'd love to hear your mindset around that.
Yeah, again, I've only just recently learned about production, and it's sort of like all my band's early stuff. Like we'd write the song, go into the studio, record it, and then that was it. So essentially, all of the albums I did were all demos. We'd go in, we'd nut it out first, like, okay, this is it. We'll release it. Go, this isn't, surviving the test of time. Should we do another one? And then we just repeat the cycle. But having it all at home, I have this ability to sit, and I call it time to fail. That's what I've given. I've got this time to fail. I've got time to try things, and if it doesn't work, then I'm not paying someone $30 an hour. Like, I'm just sitting at home, and this is what I've quit my job to do, to try things. So the production knowledge and understanding, like the ability to critically listen to music now, and especially music I like, and I listen and notice things like, oh, that's funny. And like the choir in that section was singing an aw vowel, but in the chorus they're singing an ah vowel. And it's like, oh, okay, it opens up. That's how they achieve that big moment. So like my knowledge of small tricks, production tricks like that has in turn started to affect my songwriting, because when I'm, just sitting fooling around, I can like, oh, I know what's supposed to come after this section. Like this section's kind of choked up. Next section, I kind of want to be these long, drawn out, sustained notes and things like that. So, and again, going back to talking about like why a lot of metal bands aren't very good is because they write metal songs, and the good metal bands write songs.
Totally.
Because I don't really listen to a great deal of metal. Like the stuff I do listen to, I'm very passionate about. But I actually, most of the time, I'll listen to like Chris Stapleton or Sturgill Simpson. There's a guy out in Nashville that I just worship and adore called Ben Delacour, and I'm lucky enough to have been put in touch with him. He's not he's not like Chris Stapleton famous, but like to me, like I think he's on the way. Because once people get wind of his songs, like they're just so ridiculously good. And he's given me a lot of pointers about songwriting, lyrics in particular. His lyrics are just, I don't know, like they're just like surgically precise, and they'll just get right to that nerve. If you're in the right time, right place of your life, like Ben Delacour songs will drop you. So I listen to a lot of like songwriting, and then there's some sillier stuff like ABBA and like the parallels between ABBA and like Iron Maiden and like catchier sort of metal bands like that is just silly. The fact that the metal demographic like pride themselves on being this like tough, leather clad type stuff, when you listen to the music and you're like, oh, this is pop music. This is a chorus. This is a verse, chorus, bridge, melodic bit, like. So I feel with like all my life experiences coming together, and like I'm at this beautiful point in my life where I want to take risks and try something silly, and instead of just trying to write, orchestrate something that's good and I know it's good, I want to be like, well, this intrigues me a little bit more, so I'm going to, do that. I wouldn't be in the situation where I could take such risks if I hadn't thrown myself at it. And I just feel like the sound in my head, I haven't heard it done, which is this like more, I call it stoner power metal, and it's kind of on this slider. And like the stoner metal is sort of like groovy, like low tune type stuff, and the power metal again is like down the like the ABBA scale, like Iron Maiden, Beast in Black, kind of Nightwishy type stuff. And I just feel somewhere within there is this sound that I haven't heard done. Or haven't heard done well, and I think that's like I'm going to try and invent my own sound. That's what I'm here to do.
Yeah, it's kind of like that whole thing of where would Metallica be without the Black Album? Like certainly they had some important moments leading up to that, but it's because of that they had some mainstream success.
Yeah, it's why they're Metallica.
Exactly. It's just masterful when you really consider that they found that bridge between what could be pop and what could still be metal. Indeed, and still have attitude.
Bob Rock factor, like that guy come in and be like, all right, kids, like settle down. Here's how you write a song. And yeah, like it's definitely like, getting a producer is, and having that sense, like I'd love to like work with a producer and like, pay time and money, but like we're just not at that point. So I've got to figure out a little bit on my own, try and have a little bit of success on my own, and then hopefully, start reaching out to people, and someone will go, like, hey, I can hear what he's trying to do and I think I can help.
I interviewed Adam McInnes a little while back, and I know he's got some other interviews out there. Check out all those, because he kind of gets into the songwriting formula that allows him to be successful without so much as a fan base, which is pretty incredible. What do you think about
interesting.
it? Yeah. There is a certain formula when you really listen to songs and really study them, whether it's chord progressions or lyricals, themes, or things like that are fairly common now in most pop music. So
it's all a formula. Like it's all there. It's all the same. Everyone's just writing songs.
Definitely. And then what you said about production, like I related to that too. I was kind of spoiled for a while because I had roommates or business partners around me who knew how to do this stuff, and I didn't have to do a whole lot at first.
Yeah, excellent. Sort of got the bit of a leapfrog.
Yeah, until they all quit the band and got married off, and then I was kind of left with this big home studio to myself, and then it's like, well, I'm going to podcast, and there's some things I'm going to have to figure out moving forward. So that's where a lot of my skills were honed, was in editing podcasts.
Yeah,
to the point,
YouTube how-tos and
yeah. To the point where my roommates would come back and say, "How did you get so fast at editing?" Oh, no problem. Been doing this for a while, like either monthly or weekly. At first it was monthly, but eventually it became weekly, and then it was like, wow, this can be a pretty intensive schedule.
Yeah. No, if you get quicker at it, like, you realize, oh, I've got time to do more things now. It's wonderful. I love that feeling of learning a new skill. Only reason you can hear my voice is because of YouTube tutorials.
Yeah. YouTube is huge now. I think when I was getting started, like it was 2009, so I was trying out a bunch of stuff. Like, I don't know how to describe it. I was just kind of at a little bit of intersection or crossroads in life. It's like, okay, so the things that I was just doing, they either don't exist, or we're not continuing on with them, or not working on them anymore. And the thing, I have things that I'm excited about, but I know for a fact that none of them are going to immediately pay the bills. So I was in this really interesting spot, but I started YouTubing and making videos. So I kind of had to figure that out. I started podcasting and I had to figure that out. So I was really decidedly moving into this new media direction, which is also what I applied for in school and almost got in, but they didn't have enough seats, which I think in retrospect is still best, because I was able to learn so much on my own and gain so much experience and knowledge in the real world versus kind of just sticking to the theoretical world. So I think that ended up being a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, it can work out very well for some people.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's the Twitch stuff. Yeah, making my Twitch channel, that was all YouTube. I just watched Twitch channels, took the bits I like, YouTubed how to do that, and then went from there. Like, it's a wonderful thing to just get hands on. And again, you're talking about like Twitter, dropping Twitter knowledge and things like that. Like the access to information it's really what it's there for. It's not there for like cat memes and things. Like, you should be learning from your phone. I hope I'm not shocking anybody with that information.
I think you are, my friend. I see.
It's kind of weird.
I see everything that's going on in the world, and I don't know if it's because of social media and smartphones, as they say, or because we've kind of allowed ourselves to be lazy, that the humanity, I'm not saying it's in a horrible place. I'm just saying, like, a good chunk of humanity is not in that headspace. It really is kind of like, how do I look on social media? And we can really, those are like base instincts, but the thing is, they wouldn't matter to you if you didn't have food, if you didn't have, a roof over your head, if you didn't have transportation and all that stuff.
Yeah, then worried about other things.
How you look on social media would not make a darn bit of difference.
Yeah, I have to constantly remind myself that my life is out here, because a lot of my brand and business is on social media. So I have to make sure my head's in the game before I start looking at the apps to reply to people.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, there's a great way to use it, and that's it. It's if I hadn't found that myself, I probably would have almost shunned social media even like a month or two ago. But I found a use for it that made sense, and I started connecting and engaging, and it's become meaningful and
Indeed.
fun.
It's a tool, and much like any tool, like the hammer is the perfect example. With the hammer, you could build a house for someone, or you could smash the skull in. Like everything is, it's all about the user. It's a tool. Don't forget that it's a tool, and don't forget that you don't need it.
Yeah.
If you're getting a bit lost, like, God, no, I call it doom scrolling. I find myself doom scrolling a fair bit, and then I'll realize it, and I'll just literally just throw my phone to the other end of the couch and be like, oh wow, it nearly got me. It had me in its jaws for a second. It's a lot of time. That's a lot of life.
No doubt. Yeah, exactly. I don't think anybody's going to be on their deathbed going, gosh, I really wish I spent more time on Facebook.
No, and if they do, they'd probably be FaceTiming themselves saying that. That's what it'll get to. Like, put me on, go live now.
Gosh.
These are my final words. And it'll be something, benign and pointless.
And it'll be to their VR funeral.
Yes, bring on that. I'm keen for that stuff. I'll be first in line actually when they start having augmented body parts and stuff. Like my shoulders are getting pretty sore. Like I want that hawk vision, night vision stuff. So I'll be first in line.
Yeah, I think there's certain challenges we've got to work through right now before we ever get to that level of luxury. But
yeah, they still haven't mastered melting the cheese on the Big Macs and whatnot yet. So one thing at a time. But some people haven't even mastered that. So, I
mean, not to get too conspiracy or tinfoil hat, I think there is a lot of technology. It's at least 5-10 years ahead of where we think it is underground.
Definitely. All the celebrities, all the important people are going to go to Mars and leave us here, and we'll have to figure it out.
Yeah, I've heard some theories saying Mars is already colonized long since.
A long time ago. Well, that's why I'm trying to write some good stuff, because they'll be like, oh, well, we need him. We're going to need good tunes, so give him a ticket and a +1. Elon, if you're listening, you need poems on Mars? I'll write you poems. Come on, we're going to need art.
Yeah. Art has never been more important and never more opposed. And that's kind of the age we're in now. And hopefully we can get to a point where it's not so opposed to kind of worldviews.
Yeah, people start remembering art for what it is.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a great conversation. We're almost coming up on the hour. So thanks so much for your time and generosity, Jonathan. Is there anything else I should have asked?
Thank you for having me.
All right. Is there anything else I should have asked?
No, but everyone can find me. Reach out to me. Get in touch. If you've listened and anything you want to argue about anything or discuss anything, hit me up on, I'm everywhere at Fierce Deity Band, all over the internet.
Including fiercedeityband.com, right?
Yes. Yeah, the website, hit me up. There's some contact details there. Get in my email.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you, David.
Cheers. Did you enjoy this episode of the New Music Industry Podcast? Well, there's a lot more where this came from, and you don't want to miss out on another episode, right? Then take a moment to head on over to musicentrepreneurhq.com/join to get on the email list. While there, you can download the guide that interests you most from the ebook library, all right? So take a second and head on over to musicentrepreneurhq.com/join to get your free guide and join the email list. This has been episode 222 of the New Music Industry Podcast. I'm David Andrew Weeb, and I look forward to seeing you on the stages of the world. Thank you for listening. Music in this episode was brought to you by Brian Young. Wherever you're listening to this right now, please consider leaving a 5-star review and comment to help us get the word out about the podcast.